Welcome, welcome. I got a smile on my face. It's a beautiful day. We're going to smile at the world. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Green Nurse Podcast, where we bring hope and inspiration for growth and healing. We are here to change the dialogue and stigma around what it means to feel good and be high. Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. Really excited because we're going to be doing a monthly podcast on various conditions and talking about various cannabis formulations that may be helpful for that particular condition and the associated symptoms. So here's a little video about what we do in the cannabis space as cannabis nurses and what we're going to be doing in the space as change agents for the revolution and evolution of cannabis and other plant medicines. So here we go. Hold on, I'm going to get this right. All righty. Okay. Little technical difficulties, but I'm getting there. Let's see here. Well, the video is not coming up. So let me try this one more time. It's been a while, guys. I'm a little rusty, but we're going to get this. So let me just share video file. Well, it's not going to let me do that. So let's share the screen. This video is really important to me because we actually spent a lot of time doing this video and I want you guys all to see it. So here we go, share screen. All righty. All right, here it is, finally, ta-da. Okay, wow. Yeah, we have some, I got a smile on my face. Here we go.
Please help me change the paradigm of healthcare.
The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I'm the founder of Holistic Caring. We're based here in California, and we do educational programs and case management for patients on how to use cannabis therapeutically as a medicine.
We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high, hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing.
As the founder of Holistic Caring, I basically oversee the whole ship. And what we're doing is progressive education.
Cannabis actually supports all 11 organ systems, our immune system, and all the neurotransmitter signaling systems that give messages to tell our body to either do something or not do something. Because the plant was prohibited, it prevented health professionals, doctors, and nurses from learning about cannabis as medicine.
I want to change the paradigm of healthcare and us paving the way into a new vanguard of medicine. And I'm excited to really bring this into light. There's a company called Cannabis that we're merging with, and we will now be doing global education.
It's about education, it's about empowerment, it's about teaching people how to feel good, bridging the gap from what they're not getting from traditional medicine, utilizing different plant medicines, adaptogens, tips, tricks, hugs, and nugs of information to support and nourish the most important system in our body.
It's a lot of soul work, a lot of love, a lot of discipline, and meditation. I'm using my life work as a testimony to others to learn how they can be their own hero and then go help heal the world.
And we are, as nurses, the game changers.
Yeah. There we go. We got that. Now I have to stop it. Just like I said, a little technical difficulties here. So welcome everyone to the Green Nurse Podcast. I'd like to introduce my business partner and co-host for our Green Nurse Holistic Caring monthly educational webinar podcast. Elisabeth Mack is here in the house. Yes. So, Elisabeth has quite an impressive role in the cannabis space over the past few years. So I just have to edify you, Elisabeth, because you're amazing. She's the CEO and founder of Holistic Caring and the Green Nurse. She's president of Holistic Caring, Inc., which is a 501c3 nonprofit, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. She's director of clinical affairs for Canam, founding member of the Cannabis Nurses Network, treasurer of the American Cannabis Nurses Association. She was just reelected as treasurer. And she serves on the boards of Los Angeles Normal and the San Diego Cannabis Chamber of Commerce. So, Elisabeth, welcome. I'm really excited and grateful to bring your patient and provider educational programs to life. You know, as we continue to provide those hugs and nugs, and gets a little bit more detailed in the educational platform on specific conditions and what Green Nurse approved formulations and how they may be helpful for those particular conditions. Yeah. So welcome, Elisabeth.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with you today. Happy March.
Happy March. Well, yeah, March is
Women's Month, right?
Women's Month, celebrating women. Yeah. So today is our first webinar podcast on endometriosis, and we're going to be continuing these monthly talks on various conditions. But first, Elisabeth, let's talk about the importance of women's health. And I'm going to put up a handy dandy slide before we get into endometriosis. All right, here we go. Women's health and the endocannabinoid system.
That's a good slide. Look at that.
Yeah.
So, you know, women's health encompasses many different things, right? I mean, we think about, you know, the pregnancy. That's the first thing that people think about because it's kind of, you know, genetically, it's our role is to carry babies and, you know, and to make sure that we can continue to take care of ourselves so that, you know, everything's working well, right? But sometimes things don't work all that well and it becomes dysfunctional and difficult. And, you know, the thing is, conventional care doesn't always help us. And so we're looking at things from a different way and thinking, well, maybe it's not necessarily a dysfunction that's fixable by conventional care. There might be something underlying as to why we are distressed. And so we're going to break that down today.
Yep, absolutely. And so, you know, the endocannabinoid system, you know, this kind of leads into because, and I'm going to pull up a different kind of slide here because it's really, really important for people to understand what the endocannabinoid system is. As well as, let me just pull up this other little handy dandy here. Oh, that's not that one.
A lot of slides there.
I got a lot of slides. Let me just pull this down. We'll pull up the endometriosis one first. Boy.
Can we start with what the endocannabinoid system is? I can talk in the background.
Yeah.
Right? Well, you're finding those slides. So,
yeah,
you know, we all have one. Imagine every creature on Earth with a spine, every vertebrate animal, including humans, have an endocannabinoid system. And, you know, what this is in shorthand is a master regulatory system that helps us communicate between the cells, between and within cells. So essentially, it's okay, there you go. It's feedback. It's a feedback loop that helps our body either do something or not do something. So sort of like push the gas, apply the brakes, push the gas, apply the brakes, right? And every single cell has a set point of balance where everything's functioning and humming well. And sometimes the endocannabinoid system is not working all that well, but it goes through all of our systems. And as this umbrella alludes to, the nervous system, the endocrine system, you know, circulatory, respiratory, digestion, our skin, our muscular, our cardiovascular system, our lymph, etc. So there's balance in between every single one of these systems. And the endocannabinoid system is sort of the communication pathway that makes sure that all of the messages are being received correctly and that the cells are functioning in their optimum state, right?
Excellent.
So imagine if and there's three parts to this, right? So there's receptors on cell membranes, there's endocannabinoids that we're making endogenously, and then there's receptors that break them down. Essentially, what we're finding in cannabis therapeutics is that sometimes this endocannabinoid system can become a little deficient because we're not making the endocannabinoids that we need to activate these receptors. And that happens because we might not be taking the best care of ourselves. We make these endocannabinoids through our diet, fatty acids. So we need to eat well and have good nutrient-rich diets and healthy fats. That helps us make these. And then exercise helps us keep this system fine-tuned and toned so that it's always working and it's able to help us no matter what our needs are. And so if we're not necessarily eating the best diet, sleeping, managing our stress, and exercising, we can become deficient in this. And then that's the cause of breakdown.
Right, right. So here's the other thing that's really important. You know, a lot of people, why does it work? What are endocannabinoids and how are they like phytocannabinoids? So endocannabinoids we make, phytocannabinoids the plant makes.
Mm-hmm.
This to me is probably the picture that was the jaw dropper for me, the aha moment when it makes sense, because we produce, like Elisabeth said, internal endogenous cannabinoids. We have an endocannabinoid system, not because of the cannabis plant, but because we make molecules very similar to the cannabis plant that interact with these receptors, providing messages to tell our body to either what? Do something or stop doing something. Really pretty fascinating. Endocannabinoids. So now let's just get into endometriosis and how this might apply, how the endocannabinoid system might completely 100% be related to
endometriosis. Well, so imagine, you know, if we have a communication system and messages are going one way, imagine if you can't have a return message to apply feedback. Well, sometimes when we have dysfunction and distress in the body, it's because the communication loops have broken down. And so the ECS deficiency is paving the way for dysfunction, right? So when we're talking about endometriosis, what is that condition? The condition is classified by uterine tissues and substance growing external to the womb. So, of course, our uterus, our fallopian tubes, and ovaries are all tied together, and they all have to stay in perfect balance and within their structure and function. Well, what happens in endometriosis is somehow the uterine tissues break out of the womb and spread to other areas of the abdomen. And so when we're having endocrine issues and hormonal changes, ovulation, menses, all of the different parts of the cycle, these tissues are responding to that. And they expand and contract. And when we have tissue that is external to the womb, applying those changes, it can cause issues. It can cause issues in the bowel and the bladder and the abdomen and cause spasms and contractures. It can cause a lot of pain, difficult with sex, heavy bleeding, fibroids, all kinds of things that are breaking down. And so that's, you know, there's the shortcut as to what endometriosis is. And, you know, honestly, about 10% of all women have this. 1 out of 10 women today worldwide struggle with this condition. And it's something that we do need to address because conventional care is struggling with exactly what to do.
Right. And so conventional care, Elisabeth, conventional care, what does it treatment usually look like for these types of conditions? For endometriosis?
Yeah, for endometriosis. So what are some of the symptoms, right? So when you think about conventional care, they are, you know, giving us Band-Aids to address symptoms. So if we're having a lot of pain, NSAIDs like Motrin, Aleve, ibuprofen, those are the first line defense. Some people progress to deeper levels of pain, and they might be given opiates, not as frequently today as they used to be, but essentially pain meds. And then there are hormone therapies, right? So if we're having hormone dysfunction, sometimes they try and regulate those. And you can get hormones that you can take orally. You can get Lupron injections and some of the other types of hormonal therapies. And then lastly, surgery. And surgery you know, when we think about these uterine tissues spreading outside the womb into the abdomen, you can go and remove these adhesions and lesions elsewhere in the gut and the abdominal cavity. But what happens when it repeats itself? Because
Right.
a lot of times this continues to happen. Because if we're not stopping the problem, it's just going to reoccur. So sometimes people have multiple surgeries and it becomes like whack-a-mole, where you're taking something out and then it reappears.
Right, right. So here's the other thing too that's interesting. So when we're talking about the endocannabinoid system and we're talking about endometriosis, let's talk about what the normal female reproductive system looks like in regards to cannabinoid receptors. And then we're going to pull up some research. So Elisabeth, what does the normal endocannabinoid system look like for the female in the female reproductive system?
Well, I don't know if I can say what it looks like, but we're full of these
Here
receptors.
we go. Normally, the female reproductive system, what
Yeah,
contains
it's chock full of them.
of cannabinoid receptors on all of the cell
Mm.
surfaces
Right.
that initially would reduce the inflammation and correct the endocrine imbalance. So when the endocannabinoids are available, what do the receptors do? They multiply, creating more docking locations. So if a person supplements with phytocannabinoids, plant phytocannabinoids from cannabis, the compounds can saturate those same receptors and keep them properly relaying messages to restore balance, right? So this is what we're doing. What are we doing? We want to restore our body to balance or homeostasis. We want our bodies to be running like well-oiled machines. So cannabinoids can reduce symptoms such as painful spasms, inflammation, fibroids, and can help with sleep and mood. So basically, the other thing that was very interesting is over time, using phytocannabinoids may slow the proliferative growth of these external tissues that are coming out of our uterus, which can halt the progression of some of these symptoms for a lot of these women.
That's right.
Finding,
So
yeah,
yeah, and thank you for covering those points. So yeah, our tissues are filled with these receptors, right? And when we have the endocannabinoids, they're docked in there, and they're communicating these messages. When we're not making them, those receptors are bare, and the communication pathways are broken. When we put the phytocannabinoids like CBD, THC, CBG, CBC, all of these different plant nutrients, they can bridge that gap for that patient by saturating that receptor, and then the communication can then ensue. And as you're showing here in this graph, when women are taking CBD, they're making progress. So the green is much better, and then there's a little better, and then there's no change, and the red is worsening. And as you can see across the board here on irritability and I can't read all of this, but different mood swings.
irritability, mood swings, headaches, right? Pelvic pain, bloating, food cravings, digestive upset, breast tenderness, hot flashes, low sex drive, dry skin, discomfort during sex, and urinary urgency. I don't know about you, but that's pretty debilitating to me, just looking at that. Right. So it can be very, very debilitating to so many different women.
And this study, the good thing about this study is that it is a Project CBD study, and this was only taking CBD. So a good full spectrum whole plant CBD oil is able to help on multiple systems. And this is because it's pleiotropic, which is my favorite word. And pleiotropic is able to affect many different physiologies all at one time. So instead of taking something for pain and hormones and antidepressants and sleep, etc., we can take cannabinoids, and it's going to help all of this. Right.
So really interesting. And I've got a question out here, Becky Little. What about a sterile cannabis tampon? So we're going to talk about suppositories when we get into methods of administration and products that might be helpful for this condition. So this particular slide that I pulled up is from Cannabis. And if you've been watching podcasts before, oftentimes when we're talking about specific topics, I like to reference research and what's the most current out there and kind of explain a little bit about what research is and what people are looking for as we continue to evolve, especially in the conventional system. We'll hear providers say there's not enough research, and there's a lot of research, but it's constantly evolving and developing over time. So when we look at this slide, I just kind of want to review a little bit what is out there based on endometriosis in particular clinically. And so the research shows 1 lab study, which is in vitro, 2 animal studies, which is in vivo, and 5 meta-analysis group of studies or white papers. So meta-analysis, a group of studies, a group of white papers, case studies with very similar outcomes. And so the interesting thing that I found was that overall positive was 75% using various cannabinoid formulations. And there's some other research too, Elisabeth, that we can get into. I've got my handy dandy notes here.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of human studies with this, but that goes back to the Schedule 1 restrictions on really giving people medicine. So that Project CBD observational study, really is a testament to people trying these medicines and making some progress with them. If you can go back to that one, or maybe back to our other slides.
Which one? I got this one. I like this one. Or let's see, Project CBD. There we go. That one.
Yeah, right. So this is about as good as you get when somebody is polling the audience of people that are using this. And I think this was a couple thousand women that wrote back and said what they were using it for and the efficacy. Is it helping or is it worsening? And you can see, again, across the board, it's helping in so many different ways. So, when we talk about endometriosis, it encompasses many different dysfunctional issues. And of course, people have different things, right? It's not going to affect each woman exactly the same. It's not like a lab value where we can say, whether or not you're plus or minus 10%. It is subjective and it's functional. And when we think about healthcare, we want to improve quality of life so that we're functioning, that we're feeling good, and just feeling like we're running on all cylinders.
Right. Exactly. Completely 100% agree. So, when we talk a little bit about research too, when we looked at those various studies, weren't double-blind placebo. There was no clinical human trials. My big thing when it comes to research is all of these anecdotal studies, the 75% overall positive results should be an indicator that we do need to study more people. The problem with studies, in my opinion, when I evaluate them, is a lot of times they don't take into consideration the various other factors that completely 100% determine how cannabis is going to be affected in our bodies. It's really critical for people to understand that every single thing that we do or don't do, every single thing that we tell our patients to do or not do affects the endocannabinoid system. So it's really, really hard, because if we're studying people and they're taking all these, are these other factors being taken into consideration? We don't know, right? So real world evidence to me is just as important as the clinical research that exists out there today. So let's get into, let me just pull this slide down and we'll put in this one. Why it's important, right? So we have cannabis, the endocannabinoid system. Cannabis is a catalyst for health. And, what types of products exist out on the market? And what kind of, products would you recommend for someone that has endometriosis? And there's been surveys that have been done as well. And I wrote those in the notes there.
So, essentially what we're looking at is, how do we reduce some of the inflammation and how do we reduce some of the pain? Overall, with respect to systemic modulation of this system, the endocannabinoid system, getting that to right the ship so that we function again. So, when we're looking at products, let's just start with reducing inflammation. That would be a good full spectrum CBD oil on a daily basis to start to minimize some of the inflammatory process. CBD can reduce some of those pro-inflammatory cytokines by limiting the amount of gene transcription and proliferation, and also just really containing inflammation in the first place. Because when something's inflamed, it's hot, it's red, it's on fire, there's activity. And what we want to do is sort of put a blanket over it so that things can calm down and go back to normal instead of constantly being inflamed. So really, that's probably the first job of a good whole plant, full spectrum CBD. And then for pain, we can use different things. You might want to bring in some THC and THCA to lower some of the inflammation pain. But essentially, you could use inhalation as needed for pain and for flare-ups, and to be able to, when we think about relativity, you always have to say 1 to 10, how bad is it, right? And then we're going to teach people how to go from an 8, 9, 10 down to a 4, 5, 6. With different products. And, really coming from a harm reduction standpoint, we want to introduce something that is going to be step 1 with that full spectrum CBD oil. Then you can add in some ratios, maybe a 4 to 1 CBD THC oil. A lot of times so you can use a little bit of THC during the day, but not too much. Yes, Sherri.
So for our new viewers that are out there, a lot of people don't understand what ratios are. CBD to THC, 1 to 4, 1 to 1, 3 to 1, 20 to 1, 100 to 1. So I think it's really important that we kind of let them know what that is. So full spectrum CBD products on the market pretty much are 20 to 1, right? It's considered
20 parts CBD, 1 part THC.
Exactly. And that's yeah. So it's just so when we're talking about a 3 to 1, right? It would be 3 parts CBD to 1 part THC. So let's give an example. For example, 100 milligrams, if we broke it down, 3 parts CBD would be 75 milligrams. 1 part THC would be 25 milligrams. And so that's just a little bit of an example to kind of put it into perspective.
And normally that dropper is going to be about 10 milligrams per milliliter. So, if we're looking at that, so we're going to look at about 6.5 of CBD and 3.5 of THC with a 3 to 1 oil. But there's all kinds of different ratios, but this plant grows in different variations, right? You can have Chemovar 1, which is high THC, Chemovar 2, which is a balance 1 to 1 to CBD and THC, and Chemovar 3, which is a high CBD plant. And so breeders, yes.
There's a 4th one that was just announced in Cannabis, Chemotype 4, which is CBG dominant particular types of plants and formulations.
CBG dominant.
Yes. So chemotype 1 is THC. Chemotype 2 is equal THC CBD. Chemotype 3 is more CBD than THC. And chemotype 4 is now CBG dominant. So meaning that it has an abundance of CBG and other of those other minor cannabinoids, which I found really interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah. I know. It's really kind of cool.
And CBG, the master cannabinoid, right? So it is the precursor of all of the other ones. CBGA is if you think about an embryo, speaking of endometriosis and pregnancy and women's issues, right? It's going to expand into all of the other phytonutrients as it matures and gets access to the sun and nutrients and aging.
Yeah. And what I really love about CBG, while we're on the topic really quickly, is, CBG activates those CB2 receptors to modulate inflammation. CBG also helps us to produce more of our own anandamide molecule, which I think is really, really fascinating. The bliss molecule, the molecule that we make that's similar to the THC molecule. Really, really fascinating. So the other products too that are really important is topicals. How might someone use a topical lotion, balm, salve, roll-on? How might someone want to use that?
Yeah, so we have CB1 and CB2 receptors in our skin. CB2 receptors are going to be activated and turn down the inflammatory issues and soften some of the response. And CB1 receptors are going to turn down the receptors on pain. The pain signaling, right? So together they can provide comfort, localized comfort to the abdomen, to the back, different areas of the pelvis. And so activating that locally is going to help turn down, again, 1 to 10, how bad is this? If we apply a good topical, and I like ones that have a little bit of CBD and THC, but a good full spectrum CBD one is going to be just as effective for some people. It's going to give that local comfort. And it's a great first step for people that are a little hesitant to try cannabis. They don't know if they can, and also it's not going to get into the bloodstream. So anybody that worries about drug testing and that sort of thing, then they can use topicals and not have any fear about that.
Yeah. And just the reason why, because a lot of people want to know, well, how come patches go into your bloodstream and topicals don't. And it has to do with a particular ingredient that's in it to break down to allow the capillary to absorb that oil. So if you think about cannabis oil is very thick, it's very viscous, and it's hard. You can get into the skin, it can activate the receptors, but getting into the bloodstream is difficult unless there's a particular chemical that they put on that patch to break it down so absorption happens. So really, really good stuff. Now, the other one I want to talk about is very controversial and is inhalation, right? Inhalation. People are like, oh, I don't want to smoke. Oh, cannabis inhalation is bad. Oh. I like to look at inhalation is another delivery method, a method of administration. When we're looking at all the different tools that are out there, I like people to consider it durable medical equipment. And how might inhalation be helpful? You know, how might it be helpful? Well, number one, if someone's having nausea in regards to their endometriosis, if they're having the cramping, they're having a difficult time eating, inhalation works instantly. And inhalation can actually help you to decrease that nausea so you can actually get in another method of administration, whether it might be a tincture or a capsule or, you know, an oil, like whatever method you need to get in to help. So inhalation, you know, you need to look at risk benefit ratio. Why are you using the inhalation? You know, the goal of cannabis is to take the least amount of cannabinoids to get the therapeutic effect so you can function optimally. And inhalation can be a really, really great tool for those that have a hard time getting it in right away. And it's quick acting. It's short. It's not as, you know, it's instantaneous within 5 minutes. It's not as long acting as some of the other methods of administration, and it can help people, like I said, you know, get to that the ability to be able to consume in other ways. So, you know, a little bit of THC, a little bit of CBD, inhaling, what can it do? It can add emotional benefits, improve sleep, relaxation, and it can improve energy from getting that restorative sleep.
And one of the things I like to teach people is stacking these up together, right? So that's the other thing, right? And in my opinion, as a clinician, the first thing we're going to want to do is, you know, try those topicals, right? And get that localized effect. Second thing, a good full spectrum whole plant oil on a daily basis to have systemic access to the endocannabinoid system and to be fine tuning this and supplying the body with the phytonutrients that we need, these essential fatty acids that are going to keep those receptors saturated so that it stops spreading outside of the womb areas. And then and just to give overall comfort, right? So when we take a good full spectrum oil, we're getting anti-anxiety benefits from, you know, activating 5-HT and helping us to have a much calmer, grounded approach, less anxious, better sleep. Better sleep is going to help us across the board on every one of our issues. And, you know, people with endometriosis might not have just endometriosis. There are other, you know, physicalities that can break down, because if we do have an endocannabinoid system deficiency, the odds are you're going to have some other issues that you're struggling with as well. So, and that full spectrum oil is going to help you systemically. And then inhalation, when you're in a pinch, when you're really having, you know, intense spasms and contractions or pain, and it's just too much, then inhalation is going to get you out of that in a pinch, because you breathe in these compounds, they go into the lung, right to the brain, and then boom, within a minute or two, you feel some relief. You know, and I actually had endometriosis. I used to have severe stomach issues. And so whenever I ovulated right in here, it was like there was a vice. And I couldn't do anything. There was one time I woke up at 5 a.m. and I actually kicked a hole in the wall because I was in so much pain. And that was sort of at the end of the rope for me. Nothing was working. I was having severe migraines. I was having severe endocrine issues because of this whole thing. And, you know, eventually they just did a surgery on me and took everything out. So, you know, at 29 years old, I had a radical hysterectomy, and they removed all my parts, you know, and I just had to stay on hormone replacement therapy until, gosh, 2017, when I finally went to a naturopath and she said, "You've been on this too long. We're going to have to switch you out." But this is the trajectory for people that have a lot of dysfunction and dysregulation and aren't getting the endocannabinoid system nutrients that they need. It can be very distressful. Anyway, so you want to stack these products so that you can really give people empowerment and agency to handle their own body and to be able to say, I'm going to use what I need to get myself healthy. And that goes back to hope. You teach hope as the first thing that we need to talk about. And, if you're a 29-year-old out there with severe endometriosis, you've tried hormones and pills, you've tried injections like with Lupron, you've had surgeries to remove some of these adhesions, nothing's getting better. They're looking at hysterectomy for you. There might be a way that you can modulate the system and at least give it a try before you do anything more drastic.
Absolutely. 100%. Thank you for sharing your personal story. Absolutely. It's and here it is too, as we're not only cannabis nurses, but we're also patients. We've been on the other side. That's something just a little bit different. We've all worked, all of the nurses that work with us, we've all worked in the conventional system, but we've also all been on the other side of the bed. And we know what it feels like. We know what it feels like to have that mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical discomfort and pain. And cannabis has really been an amazing tool for so many of us. And we are here to teach on the safe consumption. People are making great medicines. People are selling these medicines, but no one is interpreting how to use medicine for patients, plant medicine. And that's what we do. We do that here at Holistic Caring and the Green Nurses. We would like to invite you all to come into our community. It is a free community off of social media. It is run by registered nurses. There is a free introductory to cannabis course. Thank you, Nurse Elisabeth. Free patient portal and support group, free book club. And so we're going to be providing education as we continue. If you go right to the website, the very first thing it says, join our community here. Please come into the community. We're here to educate and empower you. We're here to hold your hand until you're ready to let go. And just really quickly, our nonprofit just formulated, and I'm going to have Elisabeth talk a little bit about that because we're going to be launching a nurse line in the next month. And Elisabeth, why don't you just give a little scoop on our nonprofit that we just formed? And then I'm going to get the last video up to wrap up.
Okay. So Holistic Caring Inc. Is a 501c3 organization that we founded so that we would be able to run that free nurse line and take donations and then treat people for no cost because, people are curious about this. A lot of times, they're like, how do I get started? And is this for me? Most of the time they just have, a couple minutes of questions before they get comfortable with, yes, I do need an appointment. Yes, this is something I can use, and it's like, my age, my condition, my state. If I live in a legal state, do I have access to these medicines? Can I buy CBD online? How do I know what to look for? What are good quality medicines, etc. And is this something that could be for me? And that free nurse line is going to quickly and easily assuage their fears, point them in the right direction, and give them some hope and inspiration to take that next step. So whether that be, I need to take a deep dive program, I need to speak to a nurse, in depth because I have multiple different pharmaceuticals or different conditions, or maybe I have something very serious like cancer, an autoimmune condition. People need to know, what is my first step? And that free nurse line allows us to be able to provide that triage, kind of like triage, right? You walk into a hospital ER and they're going to say, who are you? What do you need? What's going on? And then we'll route you in the right place. And this Holistic Caring Inc. is going to do that. It's going to be triage for the whole world, really, because we're going to be able to take calls from everywhere, and to be able to give people that basic information and partner with some brands that also want to extend some clinical tips to their consumers, and we'll be able to help them to relay these messages of what is special about them, right? How do their products work? Who are they going to be targeting? And what are the basic starting points and expectations that we can set and manage for these people? So it's essentially taking everything we do on our nurse coaching and drilling it down to just a quick little interaction where somebody is going to be able to get going. And then the other thing is, you're Green Nurse approved. We're going to be vetting other vendors and talking about, what that process is. How do you determine quality? How do you know that the potency is verified, that it's free from any contaminants? This is a plant that grows in the soil. It can pull up nasty things from the dirt if it's not done right. So we want to make sure that people are doing the right things and that it's free from all kinds of contaminants. The potency is there, the purity is there, and then the other thing that I'm going to let you talk about the media sponsorships, because that's your whole gig. So.
Yeah. So media sponsorship. So what we're doing is we want to elevate other companies. We want to get your message out. We want to be able to create videos of your platform. What is your story? If you're a dispensary or a CBD brand, or you're in the cannabis space, we have the opportunity to help craft a podcast and an interview to really get behind what compelled you to start your company, what compelled you to start your dispensary, what compelled you to start your brand, and to get your message out there so people can hear it and they can learn. And so it's really about coming together in this big ecosystem to support each other, to elevate one another, and to get this plant, the most misunderstood plant in the entire world, into as many people's hands as possible, teaching on safe consumption. So really excited that I've had this opportunity to present with you, Elisabeth. I'm a little bit rusty. I went from doing podcasts daily to now really back to weekly. And then we're going to be Elisabeth and I are going to be presenting monthly. We're going to be having these monthly, we're going to be calling them High Noon, right? Hope, Inspiration, Growth, and Healing with Holistic Caring and the Green Nurse. So
it's noon where?
Noon. Well, it's going to be noon. Well, right now we're on Mountain Time, which is going to change next week. So basically it's going to be high noon Pacific time. So the next time that we meet will be in April, and we're going to be discussing gastrointestinal health, irritable bowel syndrome. And we're going to be doing another one of these presentations. It will be high noon, which is Pacific time. So we're going to end up, because we're Mountain Time, and we're going to end up going back to Pacific time this weekend.
So noon wherever we are.
Noon wherever we are. Exactly.
Yeah.
So everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And, please do remember what it's all about. It's about living your best life and helping others do the same. I'm going to end with one of my other favorite videos because I'm so proud of these. And I want you all to see the magic of what we're creating.
We're here to educate and empower patients to make choices that are best for them. We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high. Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I was cannabis agnostic for many, many years. And the more research I did, the more I discovered that cannabis is this amazing medicine.
I was told that I had a 4-stage pancreatic cancer. The doctor really told me he couldn't do anything else. He gave me her name, and she called me and she came to my house. She started to give me cannabis. My oncologist was puzzled because he couldn't find the cancer anymore.
All of the learning that we get comes from the Green Nurses group, comes from their support, comes from their guidance. I trust everything that she says.
Simply meet people where they're at. The plant doesn't, stress to grow, so we don't stress to share it. We're healing people.
Cannabis has been used as a medicine for tens upon thousands of years. Here's the big message. Cannabis needs to be federally legal. We need to have laws that are the same across all 50 states that allow access to anyone and everyone who wants to utilize this powerful medicine.